Good morning, familiar faces and new faces. Good morning. Thanks for the organizers for having me. Thanks for coming today. So, people have been asking me, first off, it's my first attendance in BTC Prague just because I cover the Middle East and Africa. So, usually what most of the Bitcoin conferences in the West today, if not all of them, except this one today, none of them, like they all cover Bitcoin as a thesis, right? What Bitcoin can do for the world, what Bitcoin can do for the unbanked. But no one speaks about what is actually happening on the ground in the trenches. So today is not going to be very, let's say, thesis-oriented as much as going to be from the field. So a bit about me. I'm Sooly. I'm a Lebanese pleb who have been visiting Africa for the past 11 years, every 6 years for 3 years, for 3 weeks, sorry, every 6 weeks for 3 weeks. I had a crazy morning. So I founded NeoWealth. NeoWealth is a Bitcoin-only consulting company. NeoWealth helps Bitcoin-only companies enter and expand in the Middle East and Africa, and along the way, onboard non-Bitcoin companies onto Bitcoin. Mainly businesses, manufacturers, family offices, and I do some pro bono selective advisory for Bitcoin associations and NGOs in Africa. So, I serve as a Middle East and Africa nation-state advisor for Jet3. So, having said that, we see a lot of maps, and it's nice to see the infographics on Bitcoin Twitter, but the real change is not driven by the maps today. The real change of the Bitcoin adoption is happening with the collapses today, with the lack of trust today. From most of the Bitcoin owners I've known for the last years in the Middle East and Africa, none of them read the white paper. None of them have attended conferences. Maybe only a few have been attending meetups, even though in Ghana they drive 3 hours all the way just to attend the meetups. So the real adoption is happening. I'm going to take the Lebanon example, for example. From a day to another, my parents, siblings, neighbors, my grandma, the whole 4.5 million Lebanese lost access to their own money. So on 19th of October 2019, the Lebanese, if you owned $1 billion or $100 in your bank account, you can see it on the screen, digital money we can't touch, and you can't transfer outside. This is actually, that happened. So people have started hearing about there's this thing called P2P or like this app through which you can do some transactions. And this is how they got onboarded on Bitcoin. This is how Africa is doing it. Of course, there are those great startups and fintechs that are doing all the facilitations and the on-ramps. We know in the West adapting it to the global South. But there are, and we're going to talk about that later on, there's so much development happening that will create the blueprints for the West. So as I said, don't expect a thesis today. That's a report. So you must have heard the saying like, Bitcoin spreads like a rumor because it doesn't spread like a product. It's not like if you're deck for the freedom tech revolution. It's different. And in a region where collapses are frequent, the distrust and mistrust in governments or banks or the centralized systems is increasing. If you look at the map of the Middle East and Africa today, the amount and the speed, the evolution of the adoption, the curve is following the trust. High inflation. So inflation for the world is 2 digits, like really the scary part, but in our region it's 3 digits, okay? Lebanon lost 190% of the purchasing power just from 2019. Capital controls, what does capital controls mean? So this is very interesting. In 2014, I was in Angola, in Africa, and the hyperinflation started there. Before I witnessed the hyperinflation in Lebanon, because it's been happening since the 80s, but it's something else. I noticed that in all the countries where you have inflation happening, the central bank is following a hidden, let's say, it's a hidden IMF book. The IMF is obliging every single hyperinflationary country to follow rules and conditions to get donations, to get the funds from the IMF. So the first thing they do is they remove the subsidy. Okay, great, this is good Austrian economics principle, like not to back the money, right? But the second is, the commercial banks are not allowed to transfer any foreign currency outside the country. They want to keep the liquidity inside so they don't donate over, blah, blah, blah. So let's say a Bitcoin company today, orange pills, or you orange pills someone in Congo. Great. They have dollars in their bank account, but they can't actually go online to pay with it. So this is what capital controls means, and this is not related to the sanctions. Sanctions is an additional thing. And finally, it's survival. We're going to talk about Palestine and Gaza and the humanitarian aid and support for protesters, etc., and activists. All right. So before coming here, I was like, okay, I've been doing the conferences in Middle East and Africa, but BTC Prague is quite maxi. This is why I loved pitching to be here, and thanks again for the guys. I got suspended on X in last September because I wrote about the war machine because Lebanon was on war, blah, blah, blah. So I started really being active on Nostr. So I post on Nostr asking the maxis on Nostr, because for me it's like, okay, what does the West want to know? And I was like, really, I received 33 questions amazing in different ways we're going to see. But I grouped them to 6 categories, not in order. What are the tools they use? What's the adoption? What are the use cases? What's the stablecoin kind of drama there? Or like, what is it like? Mining, and how's the community dealing with it? So this is a map of Africa. By the way, this is all, you can reach out at the end, or like DM me on Nostr, I'll send you the presentation, no problem, or go, anyway. So, just the background first. Don't look at the slide, you'll have enough time. So, the Middle East and Africa is 71 countries. 54 countries in Africa alone, and 17 in the Middle East. Okay? 2 billion people. 2 billion people. Now, it has a lot of potential, but a lot of constraints. Like 48% of Middle East and North Africa only supply or have the oil reserves of the planet. So far, the detected reserves, obviously. However, the war zones affecting everything related to oil are in those areas, right? Iran, Gaza, Yemen, Sudan, Lebanon, and Syria, and so on. 30% of the global minerals are in Africa. There's an interesting fact, other than France is still printing 14 African currencies pegged to the euros every day. Those colonial currencies, I mean, colonialism have left in a specific form, but still remain in an industrial economic form. Today, just a small example, the biggest manufacturers of European cars are in Morocco, and they are exempt from tax. So every Western giant in Africa have done trading agreements in a way or another to exempt from tax. Okay, not paying tax can be very good, right? But like for those giants, I don't think it's fair. 60% of the population is under 25 years old. And without banking rails, that is not including them in the financial, economic, global system we want them to be. We keep talking about the unbanked. 350 million is a minimum because I wanted to mix and to be very conservative in data. I didn't want to be very flashy marketing-like. You might find 500 or plus based on 2 things. In Africa, you have something called the formal market and the informal markets. What's the difference? The formal markets, or the modern trade, is the hypermarkets, the malls, the supermarkets, the cantinas, the night shops you have in Europe. This is the modern trade, and this is only 20 to 30% of every single African market. The 70, 80% are informal markets, public markets, and that's the mamas and the papas on the street selling on the streets or on the tables and in tiny plastic kiosks. Now, for those, they don't have a tax registration, not because they only like freedom, but because with every rain season, they move streets from location to location. It is crazy. And other than this, with every presidential elections, like in Angola, for example, so the urban planning has been trying to get donations from the IMF and the EU, etc. In order to do that, they wanted to push those informal markets outside the cities. So every 4 years, you see like they try to close down one and they open like mushrooms everywhere. So the unbanked are not going anywhere. But what's happening? The thing is, the fintechs today, African fintechs, as an African, if you don't have a bank account, but you have an ID card, you can walk down the street to a kiosk. You show them their ID, you pay your fiat money, and they download you an app on your Android or iOS, and they add mobile money. So for them, it's like fiat, right? Like our tokens that we know, but like this is how it's happening. Those fintechs today are building Bitcoin on-ramps. They're not talking about it because they know the repercussions. So I'm just sharing really what's happening. Today, the Bitcoin-only companies in the West, and I'm helping in that, the way to cross over when they orange bill a business, how to transfer those money legally through those on-ramp Bitcoin because the government is not allowing them to transfer their dollars. How many have been to Africa? Raise your hand, please. You can lower it down. And how many have been to the Middle East? Right, cool. It's good I didn't open with this question, otherwise I would have the... So, one of the main questions I got from the 33 questions was shocking at first. It was really shocking me, because like, I fixed her number, she put like 1.5. She asked me, can 2 billion people maintain their own keys below, like, noting that their IQ is below the outside temperature? It's like, first sounds man, like... But after a deep breath, I was like, you know what, let's not take this personal. And it's fair enough because the West doesn't know. For example, we are born in the region not feeling safe since second one. No water, no electricity, no internet, no education, no hospitalization, no social security, blah, 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 blah. So we get raised, our parents teach us to think out of the box since kindergarten, building resilience, and making sure that we think of a plan B, plan C, plan D in everything. And that is related to custody. I'm not saying custody is not important and significant. However, the speed of teaching a custody or the concept of custody and mistrust, etc., in our region is much, much easier and faster. Take a minute. So you can start with the hotspots, the purple table. I got the questions about what are the hotspots in the regions, right? We keep hearing about amazing Ekasi in South Africa, right? It's an amazing hotspot. So I did like a breakdown about the different hotspots. Today, the leading regulatory hub in the world, but in our region, is Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So the UAE is being a hub, attracting investments from all over the world. Turkey, because they got through a really hyperinflation a couple of years back, they're on the board, they're between Europe, they have a foot in Europe and foot in our region. That got a lot of merchant adoption. This is a hotspot. Palestine and Gaza, for the last period of the war on Gaza, the only money that was making a difference, the quickest, cheapest, was Bitcoin. I donated for tents. I saw pictures of the tents, of the food. I'm sure some of you have seen it on Twitter, just because the central bank's oppression. Sorry. Ghana has been inspired by Ekasi. And Ekasi is South Africa, we're going to talk about it. Where you have emerging local communities where education hubs is increasing. And this is only on that side. In Kenya and Nigeria, they've been working on their legal frameworks, attracting, like, it's still very early, still a lot to be done because, like, yes, it's kind of in favor for Bitcoin, but still very early because they don't get it yet. They're just like putting it as securities, they're putting it at other crypto and so on. They're only allowing it, for example, if you're a licensed company to use it. And by the way, feel free to ask questions after the presentation. I'm going to stay here. So this is for Kenya. Nigeria is the biggest in population in Africa, 237 million people. Plus, it's the first and the biggest oil producer in Africa. So combined together with the mistrust and the history, etc., it's the biggest P2P market in Africa. It's huge. And in South Africa, I can see, first off, for the ones who have been to Africa, how many have been to South Africa specifically? Okay, half of you. So I've been going for 11 years. I have friends and family living there all over Africa. So South Africa is geographically Africa, but it's not really Africa, just because it has the infrastructure of the West. It has a lot of developed centralized systems, etc., that facilitates the adoption somehow, but complicates it somewhere else as well. It has its own problems, of course, but it's a huge hotspot today. And I invite you to speak with Tinas afterwards if you have any questions. Raise your hand, Tinas, please. Okay. So, sorry, I'm going to go back quickly. Just because we're like in BTC Prague, while doing the research, I was like, it would be cool to show the reachable nodes in the region to the left, all right? And on top, there's a very interesting fact on top. On top is the liquidity channels on Lightning. So the top 3 countries are South Africa, because you have also Mashankura there, Ghana, and Algeria. Algeria is tiny, but just for you to know, Algeria Bitcoin is banned. Okay, so this guy or lady has been, you can check their transactions. They've been actually working on Lightning and transacting on Lightning, okay? So from here onwards, it's going to be like really rapid fire. I'm not going to take time on things. Again, what's different? We don't have a lot of sound money maximalists, unfortunately. We're just like a handful of plebs. We need more education and podcasters and language in our languages. But really, everyone there that has Bitcoin, like today, you don't need to convince someone on Bitcoin in Nigeria. Like they get it. They know what it is. They don't need to read the white paper, etc. Privacy. Like, guys, do you use Cashew? Do you use eCash? No, we don't. I mean, I use it just for testing and fun, being like a nerd. But most of the population doesn't. Now, today in Prague, if you lose your phone, you file it, you report it to the police, and you buy a new one, right? In Gaza, if you lose your phone, it's traced, you're caught, beaten, and jailed. That's if you're lucky. I don't know how many of you have heard of this, but while preparing for this keynote, I was like, apparently, in Prague, this month or like recently, the Minister of Justice has resigned because he received about $40 million for sharing with an ex-prisoner, it gets better, the private keys of a confiscated signing device, a cold wallet, because that guy he was like a drug dealer on the dark web. So what is the similarity here? Regardless where you are in the world, privacy is super important. The moment they know that you have Bitcoin, the moment they know about your private seed or you disclose it, in a way, they're going to abuse you in a way or another. What apps do they use? They use 3 main apps from my experience. Blink is one. Second is Blue Wallet. Third is Aqua. And I can answer you afterwards after the presentation why, but those are the train me ones. I had a couple of stories that were really crazy. Like, one of them doesn't trust the apps, they trust their brothers. I asked them, like, what if your brother vanishes? We're like, okay, I have another sister who can pass on the message. Someone who was fleeing from Gaza wrote their seed phrases in Arabic. They translated every single word in Arabic, put it in a bottle, plastic bottle, sealed it, and then they fled. So there are really different ways of doing things. Stablecoins are winning the first transaction. That's annoying, but let's be fair. It's fiat. Everyone's used to fiat. It mimics the fiat, so it's easier to understand, easier to adopt, and there's a lot of marketing shitcoinery happening. Now, however, there are a lot of bridges being built to reach that orange house, right? But we need to keep, as much as we are toxic maxis, we need to keep working on education, because if things continue without any effort from our end, it's gonna be just another fiat house, but just like with an orange color. It's not gonna be any different. Now, I received an amazing question about mining, different question, but one hit me the most, like, are you using, is the heat from ASICs being used? Sébastien and Thomas are like OGs in Congo, mining in the only gorilla national reserve in Congo. They've been there for a few years, they're doing well, they've been contributing to the park, even the World Economic Forum spoke about them. So they've been helping the park, the foreign rangers, the gorillas, and then the business is so well, they were like, okay, we need to do something else. They started a chocolate production factory nearby. So that mine that is in the reserve is powered by hydro already, okay? So they started this production, then they added ASICs to dry the cacao seeds for the chocolate production. So that's been actually working. And I invite you to look up Gridless. Gridless is working using heat in mining as well. So mining, it's actually healing in a lot of areas, economic, but also social and cultural, and the cuisine sometimes. Now, many have asked me about like what's happening for circular economies, etc. Ekasi is doing great, sharing. Bitcoin Dada in Kenya as well, and many others. I started advising Bitcoin Duo in 2023. They're not active social media, only on Nostr, so feel free to scan them and check them out and support. But like for Bitcoin Duo, they started really small. They had a room doing workshop, coding for kids and youth in general. Then they started onboarding farmers, then buying seeds with sats and planting those seeds in farms, raising the crop, selling it in the market, and then onboarding merchants from the different sectors, and they still need to work on that as well. They're at 16 today. They lately received the first significant grant from Block, from Jack Dorsey, 50 grand, to buy a field. They're gonna make it like a sports kind of football, soccer field with an education center in it for Bitcoin circular economy. That's the team. Those pictures were sent 3-4 days ago for the progress. I need to share one important thing. In my previous life, I used to work in humanitarian and NGOs and emergencies, where sustainable economies and villages, etc., are quite tough. And we've been having long conversations yesterday on that and the day before. To build a circular economy, you need to follow specific steps that make sense for the economy to flow, everyone to be productive and incentivized. Now, those organizations are educating grassroots, including the merchants. Great. But like any economy, you need liquidity to flow. Like, where would the Bitcoin come from if you guys don't visit first, spend your Bitcoin, or go there and donate your Bitcoin? So I invite everyone who happens to be in those countries, before visiting any country it is, just check if there's any circular economy being built there, visit it, it's a great experience, or check them online and support. Now, someone asked maybe the best question, in my opinion. Who benefits the most from sending Bitcoin or using Bitcoin in the region? Again, we go back to the thinking of the hotspots and where they are to identify it. In Turkey, for example, the merchants are benefiting the most from the Bitcoin adoption, okay? Because it's allowing everyone to transact with it, and the banks are accepting it, etc. If you are in Egypt today, where Bitcoin is banned, but you're a freelancer, you can't open a PayPal account, right? So freelancers are benefiting the most from it. If you're in Lebanon or Palestine or Sudan or Yemen and so on, refugees can now, they've been receiving the remittances and support, the humanitarian aid, through Bitcoin. So there are the beneficiaries in those countries. Protesters, that goes without saying, because no one can stop Bitcoin, not the US, not Russia, not China, not the EU. Now, the interesting two parts that I work with are the money transfer offices, like in Kenya and Nigeria, where they are already licensed international currency transfers, and they adopt Bitcoin, so they are benefiting, they're making a huge advantage. And my baby, my favorite baby, is the last one, is manufacturers. Factories in Africa, those are contributing to the economy with real jobs, real raw materials, etc. And those, I'm approaching them to build a layer 2 on top of their first layer of manufacturing, because as a business owner, you wait the end of the month to come to see your P&L, your profit and loss report, to see if you're making money or not. And one of the most painful costs are energy for manufacturers, right? So you have this cost center that we're transforming to a profit center using mining. So I don't pitch, I don't try to orange pill them the Bitcoin first. I tell them like, okay, why don't you optimize? What's your capacity? Go through the assessment, and then they start adding those machines to stabilize the grid, optimize the machine, optimize the generators, and then they understand, of course, it's Bitcoin. Then they see the impact on the balance sheets, on the treasury, and the P&L, and then they want more Bitcoin because they don't have enough miners, enough space on their manufacturing sites. And then we go back to the thesis in the West, where is it, like, what can it do for the global South in general? Yes, it helps the excluded, but it helps optimize the productive elements. So be it like freelancers, individuals who work like on themselves, or businesses and merchants. And one person asked me, like, are they leaving their countries after receiving Bitcoin? Well, actually 2 months ago, I was having a call with Ghana with a lady, Linda. She told me, Sooly, I used to want to leave, but now that I'm working and earning in Bitcoin, I have hope, and I'm staying here. I'm not planning to leave anymore. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy this one. Take care.
Secure your BTC Prague 2026 ticket at the lowest possible price now.